What are some seemingly normal images with disturbing backstories? Attention. Serious tag notice. Jokes, puns, and off-topic comments are not permitted in any comment, parent or child. Parent comments that aren't from the target group will be removed, along with their child replies. Report comments that violate these rules. Posts that have few relevant answers within the first hour, and posts that are not appropriate for the serious tag will be removed. Consider doing an AMA request instead. Thanks for your cooperation and enjoy the discussion. I'm a bot, and this action was performed automatically. Please contact the moderators of this subreddit /message/compose/to/r/askreddit if you have any questions or concerns. This father-daughter photo. The man in the photo, Franklin Delano Floyd, had married a woman and had custody over her children while she was in prison for 30 days. The girl in the photo is one of the children, whom Floyd decided to kidnap to start a new life with, leaving behind her siblings. 2 went to foster care, and 1, an infant, had never been found. The photo was taken shortly after moving, claiming her as his biological daughter, and changing their names. He later went on to marry her. It's a rabbit hole in itself involving other abductions, murder, kidnappings, and so on. Floyd is a disturbing individual and the photo is so eerie with the story it has. Damn, I just read the Wikipedia article. Dude ended up murdering her in a hit and run in '89. Her infant son was given up by this lunatic to foster care. Then it was found out when he tried to regain custody after 6 months he had no biological link to the kid. Then walks into that kid's school with a gun, orders the principal at gunpoint to lead him to the kid's class, takes the kid and principal hostage, kicked the principal out of the truck, and was finally found and arrested 2 months later. The kid hasn't been seen since. But apparently in a '15 interview he's still alive on death row. This crazy peeps admitted to shooting the kid the same day he kidnapped him. Holipes. Now that's a monster in human form. Damn it. An old violin being sold at auction. At 1.5 meters it's one of the most valuable violins in the world. Not because of who made it, but because of who played it. The initials W.H. stand for Wallace Hartley, the lead violinist on the Titanic. This is the instrument he played the night she sank, before Hartley himself died. This violin was found floating in the debris field. Kids playing on a street in Pripyat. The entire city will be forcibly evacuated due to the explosion at the nearby Chernobyl nuclear reactor. This old photo, taken in 1924 during one of the first British expeditions to Mount Everest. Shortly after this was taken, the 2 men in the picture, George Mallory and Sandy Irvine, would make an attempt for the summit. Mallory's body will be found in 1999. We still haven't found Irvine. Alan Hooby, freshman at the University of Oklahoma in 2014, murdered his entire family on a Friday. The next day, he drove down to Dallas for the OU-Texas football game, where he stayed in a hotel with his friends and posted this candid photo on Instagram, in what I assume would be an attempt to build an alibi. Didn't work, as he quickly confessed and received multiple life sentences. Still, I can't imagine what the people in this photo, and others who were probably in that hotel room, must felt when they learned what had happened. I don't know about this case or anyone involved, but I ran into an old classmate from junior high when I was around 20 on a bus one day. We talked a while. Seemed like he was doing really good. He was known for making pretty decisions, including violent ones in the past. We caught up a while and he even walked me to my next bus stop, and we said our goodbyes. 2 days later I grabbed the paper at work to read, and it was front page news that he and 2 others were arrested in a murder. When we had caught up that day he had already killed someone. Sticks with me every day that he just seemed so normal. Good even. You really never know about someone. I've just spent 4 hours on this thread and honestly I've creeped myself out. This is the last image of a woman called Corrie Van Vegel, who went missing on her descent of the Mardi Himal trek in Nepal in February 2018. I was lucky enough to meet her in a hot spring a couple days before. She'd come to Nepal on her own to do some trekking and a yoga retreat. She only had 4/5 days of trekking left, which included a hike up from the hot springs to Mardi Himal Basa camp and then back down to the city Pokhara. I only knew she'd gone missing because I saw her missing person poster in the mountain village I was staying in a few weeks later. She was a lovely person full of life and adventure, sociable and kind, and it's weird to think I was one of the last people she'd ever met. Rest in peace. I'm late, but this image is of a 23-year-old woman hitchhiking carrying her infant son while apartment hunting on Mother's Day, posted in a local newspaper. It's tragic because I believe it's possibly the last photo of her alive. Less than 4 months later she was killed by her husband during a fight. In between this photo and the murder, their son was taken away and put into foster care, where he was later adopted by his foster parents. This image from the 1988 Gladbeck hostage crisis in Germany. The guy on the left is a robber. The girl on the right is a hostage who was killed while the police was taking action to stop the crisis. First day, 2 guys robbed a bank and held some people as hostages. They first demanded a getaway car. They were given a white Audi and 300,000 German marks. They took 2 hostages with them in the car. Later one of the robbers' sister boarded the car with them. News reporters were following them with their cars. The next day, the robbers hijacked a bus with 32 passengers in them. A couple of times they allowed a news reporter to come in the bus and interview them. Later one of the robbers even came out of the bus to give an interview. It's in German _PL1Q. You can see the hostage bus in the back. He said that he doesn't care what will happen in the end because he will kill himself and that he doesn't give up about his life. Later they led some hostages out of the bus and drove the bus away. They stopped the bus at a gas station where the sister of the robber went to the toilet, where police arrested her. When the robber found out about it, he said that they have 5 minutes to free her or a hostage will be killed. She was let free, but while she was going to the bus an Italian teenager was killed by the robbers. The Italian teenager was protecting his little sister. He could have survived if there was an ambulance near the gas station. In the night, they drove the bus to the Netherlands, where the Dutch police demanded them to release the young hostages first, before accepting any offerings from the robbers. After they led some hostages away, the Dutch police gave the robbers a BMW car with remote control. The robbers took 2 hostages with them and drove back to Germany. Later on they were surrounded by a lot of media reporters who took a lot of pictures of the scene which can be found in Google. While they were driving on a highway the German police finally took action and rammed the hostage car. The remote controller was forgotten somewhere, so it wasn't used. One of the hostages could flee off the highway, while the other hostage was shot and killed. The driver-robber later said in an interview that the bullets from the policeman killed the hostage. The German police denies that and said that the robber's bullet hit the hostage. Here is a link _hostage_crisis to a Wikipedia page of it. The police and the media were heavily criticized because of the lack of taking action police and not letting any police near the crime scene. Media. Edit. Typus. What the is everyone even trying to do in this story? This was from a case in Denmark a couple of years ago. The woman was a Swedish journalist who was invited by the man to come with him in his home-built submarine. This was one of the last pictures of her before he brutally killed her and her mutilated body different places under the water to hide it. A crazy man with upset mind. He tried to hide it. He literally was the only one who could have done it. This picture of Russian ambassador to Turkey Andrei Karlov standing in an art gallery about to do a conference. Behind him is Mevlut Murtaldanta, the man who is about to assassinate him. This Brazilian priest attempted to travel, at the year of 2008, by balloons, from Brazilian city Piranagu, Rio Grande do Sul Estate to Dourado, Mato Grosso do Sul Estate, 948 kilometers according to Google. He attempted to break a record and raise funds for his organization that did charity for truck drivers. But bad weather altered his trajectory and he had problems with his GPS monitoring, resulting in him flying into the ocean and drowning. This is a very known history in Brazil. This. One of Auschwitz employees. I know this thread is a little old now, but some morbid scrollers may find this fascinating. This photo is of Issa Isagawa, an actual cannibal from Japan. This photo was taken for a Japanese magazine after he was released from prison due to insanity. He was frequently on talk shows, reviewed restaurants for magazines and even appeared in horror films. He wrote a book on his murder of Renée Hartevelt, and you can read in explicit detail about how his mind conflated eating her to a romantic act. Note, it is not for the faint of heart. It will not leave you. Just imagine this guy kills and eats your daughter and then becomes a celebrity because of it. Mike Hawthorne and Ivor Boob celebrating with champagne after winning the 24H Le Mans. Specifically the 1955 Le Mans, during which 84 people, mostly spectators, were killed in a crash. A crash which was at least partially caused by Hawthorne. Here's an old British Path News video about the race, which includes footage of the crash. The announcer seems so cheerful. Women and children are dying. Whole families are wiped out. But most of the finishing cars were British. A fine achievement in this abhorrent tragedy. Yeah. The announcer seems completely unfazed by the actual words coming out of there, if they are just commentating on a standard race, not some awful tragedy. You can see the driver's body in the footage too. I wasn't expecting that. It wasn't too graphic, but still. My mouth fell open at the crash. At speeds like that it's just horrifying. Last image of Sydney Loof before she was murdered by her Tinder date. She had been cut into 14 pieces and part of her upper left arm was never found. Her body was brought to the morgue in 6 separate bags. So I just looked this up, and it appears far more strange than you let on. Sydney Loof, age 24, began talking to a woman on Tinder who used the fake name Audrey, but it was actually 25-year-old woman Bailey Boswell. The two went on a date. Then they went on a second date in which they went to Bailey's home where she lived with her 52-year-old boyfriend Aubrey Trail. Sydney died that night. So Aubrey was a lifelong conman and a sadist who wanted to have a sex cult coven sort of thing comprised of women who were subservient to him. The women told jurors that Trail and Boswell spoke more than once about a desire to torture and kill someone so the women could become witches and gain powers. One woman said the pair intended to record and sell such a video for $1 million. There's more to it than that, but just a strange story. This picture was taken by the crew of a ship who saw this girl 11 floating on a disintegrating float. Her whole family was murdered on a sailboat by their hired captain who left her to drown with the sinking boat. She miraculously made it to the Cork life float. She drifted for 4 days. No water, no food, being burned by the sun. Upon hearing that she had survived, the captain killed himself. Ship. Most all photos of the bodies on Mount Everest are something else. I can't find the 2006 video of David Sharp though. He climbed without a guide, without extra oxygen, and at the wrong time of the day. It is unknown if he reached the summit, but he ended up in the cave below summit with the dead mountaineer from 1996 nicknamed Green Boots. He basically sat there and slowly froze to death. A few groups amounting to around 40 people thought he was already dead when they passed him and some stopped for him, but could only do so much. There was definitely a video of him from one climber's GoPro identifying himself as he sat there basically on the edge of death. The few pictures of him are him sitting in the cave missing his heavy gloves, probably still alive. Mountaineer. Heads up, there's a lot of bodies in this album. Many have been moved out of sight of the climbing routes supposedly, dropped into crevasses and such, including Green Boots who is one of the most known. It always trips me out how Everest is just littered with bodies from over the decades. Plus how they are used as markers. That body frozen-esque creepy. Somehow haven't seen that until now. Comforting to know that's how she died, though. At least. A few years back I read a book about the mountaineering history of Everest and K2. The author talks about a place on Everest called the Rainbow Valley. Despite what you would think, because of the name it's actually an area in the death zone which is like above 8,000 meters. I think that due to its location the bodies of most people who die in the mountain end up in the valley, where they stay in a frozen graveyard. It's called the Rainbow Valley because of the brightly colored mountaineering clothing that litter the area. Here are over 100 pictures taken by serial killer Rodney Alcala, the dating game killer. Alcala would say he was a photographer and convince people to model for him in remote locations. It is unknown how many people this man killed in his time as a serial killer. Any of these photos could be of people he killed. This article shows a photo of 3 girls smiling together via selfie. The light on the right hand side of the photo is the headlight of the train that hits them moments later. My dad has been a train driver for over 30 years now. A guy stepped out onto the tracks when he was driving one night. My dad had to stop, take his torch, and go look for him. The guy was injured, but got taken to hospital to recover. My dad took 6 weeks out and it really shook him up. The lad had only been in his 20s. The same guy came out of hospital and returned to the track. This time it was one of my dad's friends who hit him, sliced his legs clean off and he died. My dad's friend never drove a train again after that, and I know it stuck with my dad for years.